Shukran, ya Professor. Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me. I have to apologize my colleague Jiří Kmošek, who is on a family trip and he cannot be here. And the deal is I will show you some of the unpublished material and I would like to ask you not to photograph it. And we will discuss it. What is its meaning and how it feeds back into the desert. Let's start right in. What's the important thing? There are many, or there are some philologists that think that written sources give them all of the information. But there are also archaeologists who think that you can basically excavate everything because everything was left at the site and you can work with it and there is the evidence that you can use and reconstruct the past lives. But nobody is perfect. And neither is your particular piece of evidence if it's a single one. So we will, in this talk, we will revisit and examine three groups of evidence. Copper ores of the Eastern Desert and Sinai, mining and processing sites in the desert, and some workshops in the Nile Valley, Old Kingdom Giza, Middle Kingdom Elephantine, and New Kingdom el-Retaba. And I can promise that we will reach some conclusions. Chain operator was quite often mentioned already yesterday. Here it is again. We will be working with a chain operator of copper, which is a process. If you want to produce any copper artifact, you need to follow certain steps from the copper ore until the resulting artifact, which you can then recycle. Fortunately, metals bear information on their provenance and technology due to their chemical and physical properties. The interpretation is quite complex, but you can work with it. So there are like four main groups of this chain operatoire of copper. It's the initial procurement, maybe some initial processing, which takes place in the desert with prospectors, metalworkers participating, maybe also other people. Then you have to store the copper and maybe do some revenues and transactions with it. You have to process the copper, and this also could take place in the desert, and some of the metalworkers could participate. And then you use the artifacts, recycle them, use them again. So you can sometimes be in this vicious circle and getting back. If you have been following our work, we of course dealt mostly with the artifacts, not with the metalworking processes. And here are some of the recent publications. In the red book, I also tried to dabble a little bit into expeditions and like this initial part of the chain operatoire. What do we need to remember for the talk? There are three big groups of material made of copper alloys. It's non-alloyed copper, copper with impurities, copper alloyed either with arsenic or tin. Arsenical coppers are older, tin bronzes are later, especially in the New Kingdom, but they occur quite often already in the Middle Kingdom. And for the ore provenance, if you sample the objects and you get chemical composition, but also so-called lead isotope ratios, to find out more about the provenance, you need to compare the data with the lead isotope ratios of the copper ores. And I have to say that we know almost zero about the geochemistry of copper ores in the Eastern Desert. And you can compare the number of data in other regions, for example, on Cyprus, in Anatolia, in Greek sources, from Oman. Of course, Iran could be here. Sinai, and in Eastern Desert, we have about 8 data points, but 2 of these are from Ein Sokhna, and there is a hypothesis that Ein Sokhna material is coming from Sinai as well, so we have 6, not 8. We have tried to do something with it, so we obtained some samples from Jim Harrell from University of Toledo, and also from the collection in Heidelberg from Dina Faltings. And recently, we had a small project funded by the European Union, which was analyzing this material. And the partner institution was Mannheim with Professor Pernicka. And we will try to increase the number of the analyzed samples. So here I can show you some 50 shades of green, different copper ores from different sites. And now the lead isotopes are not that important. What is important is trace elemental composition. And when you map this trace elemental composition on the box plot, The most important thing is arsenic. It's quite low. It's below 0.01% anywhere in these copper ores. There are some outliers which are coming from Sinai, especially from the specific site Wadi Tar, which is very, very far from the Egyptian reach or any Egyptian presence. It's in south eastern Sinai. And this small site is supposed to supply not only Egyptian arsenical copper, but also Levantine arsenical copper. It's too much for one small site. So there is a problem of where is this arsenic? We have a lot of mining and copper processing sites. Here are examples of Wadi Dara and also example of Ain Sokhna in Isabel Gonçalves' this paper. You have seen quite a lot of images from Ain Sokhna. Here is one of the papers about the chaîne opératoire. And on these sites, we have presence of metalworking installations, furnaces, crucibles, slag, but quite a low number of artifacts, especially on mining sites. It looks like they were mining with stone tools, not with the metal tools. Big artifacts and ingots are mostly missing. Sites published only as preliminary reports are, for example, Wadi Dara or Ain Sokhna. And so far, there is absence of arsenic in published papers, although our French and Belgian colleagues presented recently a paper that they have some little arsenic processing at Ain Sokhna, some of it dated to the Old Kingdom, some to the Middle Kingdom, but we cannot work with data until it's published. We have several groups of, well, officials or people who were dealing with desert, and as Julian shown in his keynote, on much wider scale, these were different people of different social standing. There was a big discussion in the literature about the prospectors and about what they were actually doing in the desert. And in inscriptions, some of these prospectors in the Old Kingdom sources, they are looking for greenstones. Some of them are looking for silver in the Eastern Desert. But some of authors suppose that they were only focusing on these like more precious materials and not on mere copper. But what Nadine and Greg showed in Edfu, there is a connection of, well, presence of prospectors and also some copper metallurgy. There is also a very nice paper by Emily Martinet from 2021, which is a little bit deceptive by its title because it not only deals with particular site of Edfu in 5th and 6th dynasty, but also this stripe of desert, which is going in the eastwards direction. And in this paper, she quite nicely gathered together not only the prosopographical evidence, but also it's quite a lot. This paper is quite a lot about copper. So this is the mining and initial processing of copper. When we go back to the Nile Valley, we have several workshop sites which we studied, and we published some preliminary reports and one final paper on the samples and on the artifacts that are now in the Krömer Sammlung in Vienna, and they are datable to the 4th dynasty. What we are mostly dealing with is Mark Lehner's workshop from the late 4th dynasty, 4D17X, which is copper workshop where you can see quite nicely bread molds embedded into walls and in the corners, which were in fixed positions. And what I'm starting to call great crucible mystery of Giza is whether in these bread molds there were crucibles used. We need to study more samples to corroborate or refute this. But we already sampled all deposits from this workshop, and in all of the layers, arsenical copper was present, and there was no presence of tin or tin bronze. And also, we have tried to sample the remaining part of Hetelgurab and other parts of the site where there was metalworking material, but there is always arsenical copper. Here it is. It's a copper prill with a width of about human hair, and it's present in a iron slag matrix. And this is the kind of material that even Egyptians in the 4th dynasty were not interested in using. And this is the material that we are finding out and studying. If arsenic is absent at the mining site and present in the workshops, it has to come from somewhere. Somewhere it needs to be added. We will move briefly to el-Retaba, early New Kingdom site, but also third intermediate period site in Wadi Tumilat, where we were expecting, we had quite a lot of metalworking material, and we expected alloys either with arsenic or tin, and some more information about these processes maybe from slightly later times. What we have found out is that they have very likely processing fresh copper, which was coming from somewhere from eastern desert of Sinai. So you can see that even in the sites that we would consider, and they were part of the gnome structure, they were processing copper, which we can show on the material that this is coming directly from the desert and it's not alloyed. And they are using it on the site, and almost all of these samples were this copper without alloying additions. Then tin alloys appear in 19th dynasty and 13th intermediate period, but we need to do more samples from el-Retaba, and about these samples we are preparing a report into Egypt and Levante. From el-Retaba, we will now move to the island of Elephantine, which I don't have to introduce you in any way. And we were studying the material from Johanna Siegel's Realities of Life project. You know all of these things, and at the conference that was organized by Fatma Kesh, we have seen several papers about this material. What is important, from these two small archaeological squares, we were dealing with metalworking material that its complete weight was 850 grams. That was all. It basically can fit in 2 hands. So we studied it. There were about 80 pieces of slag, about 300 pieces of frills, some artifacts and artifact fragments, some fragments of crucibles, and about 16 minerals. And we started with a portable X-ray fluorescence, and then we sorted out interesting material, which was moved here into IFAO, and IFAO is quite a lot helping us with everything, and the laboratory is phenomenal. So we prepared samples here in the laboratory, and they were studied with the metallographic microscope, and then they were analyzed again because you could see inside the samples into the microstructures. And then we also analyzed some of these samples with a scanning electron microscope in Desert Research Center. So we could really focus on very small parts of these microstructures to understand what metalworking processes were happening on Elephantine during the Middle Kingdom. This is from 11th to 13th dynasty. And I will not deal with everything from this side. I will only show you one sample, which was quite surprising because we have found something that is called spice. And it's material that does not occur in nature because it's a humanly made product that is an unwanted product of metallurgy currently. But from time to time, it was used in the past, and it was used for the production of arsenical copper, or we can call it now arsenical bronze. And this spice, which is mostly compound of iron and arsenic, was put together with copper, and arsenical coppers or arsenical bronzes were created out of it. And what is also interesting, it contains about 3% of lead. Oh, I will get to that. Yeah, I basically said it. This is spice. It's a compound of heavy metals with major amounts of arsenic and or antimony. They are called arsenate or antimonate. And when they are fresh, they look nice and shiny. And when they are corroded, they look terrible. You basically can miss them because it does not look as anything important. And this is big because this is the first specimen of spice that we were able to study in Egypt on the Elephantine Island. And the spice technology is datable back to the 3rd millennium BC, and the best published contexts from the early Bronze Age are coming from Iran. And there are some small bits and pieces, for example, from Oman, also from southern Levant. And later on, for example, Camida Los, it's a late Bronze Age site, and there is also spice within a lot of tin bronze metallurgy. There are also other slags which show us this process of alloying spice with arsenic, and from where then is coming arsenic. Our hunch is that it's coming from arsenopyrite, which is a mineral which occurs also in the Eastern Desert. And spice could be smelted from it. And it's quite often associated with gold in the Eastern Desert. And we already proposed this in this paper about the chromer tools, but then we were thinking about other process, not the use of spice, but now, at least based on Elephantine and on some other samples that we already studied, because now we know what we are looking for, it looks like it was much more widely dispersed. And because there is lead in spice, it complicates beyond measure the interpretation of the lead isotopes for early Egyptian metalwork, because we need to start to interpret it again. So in chain operatoire, even in the archaeological record, some of the parts can be missing, and especially parts that were deemed to be important and valuable for the ancient people, for the ancient metalworkers. And so this spice fragment was only one of 48 samples that we transported from Elephantine here to Cairo. And we will only briefly look on two examples, minerals and copper ingots. These are all the ingots and ingot fragments which are known to me or to us from whole Chalcolithic and Bronze Age from Egypt. In the lower left corner, you can notice the only fragment of oxide ingot that was ever found, and it's coming from Cantier, from the excavations. But we have a number of them, of course, in New Kingdom iconographic sources, but this is the only fragment that was found. And two of these ingots we published, one from Abusir, and one will be included in the report on el-Retaba, and it's coming from second intermediate period. As for the minerals, for illustration, in Old Kingdom Giza, from the whole area that was excavated by ERA mission, it's about 100 grams of minerals, copper minerals, and minerals that could be connected to copper metallurgy. In the copper workshop alone that was excavated, it's only 4 grams of minerals. And in Middle Kingdom Elephantine, from Realities of Life material, there is only of all these 850 grams, there are 35 grams of fragments of minerals that were lost, and they were deposited in these layers. So there are some missing chain links in the chain operatoire, and we have to be very careful with the archaeological contexts. And it's not only, regarding metallurgy, it's not only about copper and gold. There might be alloying elements of arsenic and tin, and also iron ores that might serve as fluxing agents for the copper production, and they were very likely targeted quite soon in the Eastern Desert, and maybe also on Sinai. For us, for the study of these workshops, it served us well to do really hundreds of PXRF spectra, then selecting the interesting material and then studying it further. So having several levels of data and of support for our hypotheses. Sometimes PXRF is not enough for this. To conclude, as I said, even in the archaeological record, parts of the chain operatoire are missing. It's not only about these like textbook arrows of Egyptians or local populations going to the desert, getting the stuff that is important, and then going back. Of course, Julian showed very well how this was complex, and well, many papers here at the conference. And we do not yet understand these processes well. So they might have been different for each period, site, and region. So what's really at stake is that we can finally bury this notion of like primitive technology, because it was not primitive technology. Thank you for your attention.